Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. My name is Stephen Ferghese. I'm the Murunah project lead from IWMI. People are still filtering in, so we have just a couple of minutes of welcome and a small amount of housekeeping before we really get into it. So firstly, I just wanted to give a brief introduction of the purpose for the webinar, why we're here today, then a little bit on the housekeeping, and then I'll hand it over for to really dive into the content. So the origin of this webinar is from our Murunah regional workshop, which we held in February of this year. At the workshop, we described some of the climate change downscaling work that we were doing, and a number of the project stakeholders were asking questions about, okay, now that you have the climate change downscaling information, what will you do with it? And saying things like, we often hear scientists and applied researchers saying, right, we need better downscaling information before we can do this or that. And wondering how we actually apply the information. So that's the real purpose of this webinar, is to delve into the climate change downscaling information itself. What does it mean? How did we generate it? And also, how are we using it in practice? And that's really the heart of it. And that gets to how we apply this information in practice. And it speaks to IWMI's Applied Research for Development remit. So in our work, as you will hear today, we are applying the climate change downscaling in a variety of different manners. And that's what we want to communicate and engage with you about. We will also be working on operational guidance and implementation guidance support for various stakeholders through the Murunah project. So today we're hoping to get some ideas from you about what can make that kind of guidance for practitioners more useful and practical, so that our products down the road can be more useful. Finally, we're doing this webinar now as a lead-in to a number of other events this quarter and then in the future in the project. So next week we will be at Cairo Water Week. We have several sessions there, and so we're using this webinar as a build-in to help get ourselves prepared, generate interest, and also to start spreading the word about what Murunah is doing more widely. So that's the real purpose of the webinar today. In terms of housekeeping and general technical information, please post questions in the chat as you go, as the presentations progress. So just write in the chat if any questions or comments come to mind. During the Q&A sessions, the host will be able to unmute you so that you can speak to your question or comment. So during the Q&A time, please raise your digital hand and to note that you would like to speak. And then the hosts will be able to unmute you and we can hear your question or comment at that time. So that's the brief housekeeping. And now I will hand over to Dr. Vidisha Samarasekera for an introduction to today's session and the rest of our time together today. Thank you very much. And now over to you, Vidisha.
Great, thank you very much, Stephen. And I look forward to Wasudha sharing the screen. So look, great, thank you very much. Hello and welcome to our Murunah project webinar this morning. And this is on high-resolution climate change downscaling for resilient nature-based water solutions in the MENA region. As Stephen introduced me, I don't think I need to introduce myself again, save myself a number of minutes. But I'm also, as I function as the program director for water, climate change and resilience, I'm also really lucky to also be the project director for Murunah, a project which is led by IWMI and delivered in partnership with IUCN and funded by UK Aid. Okay, I think what I'll do next is start with a few words about Murunah in terms of overall framing, and how this climate change, really important climate change downscaling work fits into the project. Importantly, how it can be used in the future, and ultimately how government stakeholders and practitioners are going to benefit from it. Following on from this, I'm going to hand over for a short presentation from Dr. Tara Finn from the Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office, FCDO, to enable her to discuss the project's approach and why it appeals and is important to FCDO. After Dr. Finn, we will have a presentation by Karim Bagao, IWMI's expert meteorologist and climate change modeler, and he will explain the climate change downscaling approach and the results. This body of work is based on Karim's work. Then we will have presentations from our Al Murunah partners describing the resilient nature-based water solution pilots they are implementing in Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, and the Occupied Palestinian Territories, including, importantly, how they incorporate and use this downscaling information. Here, we're lucky to have colleagues from IUCN, Hakim Mandouri and Faiza Slehat. I'm very happy to see them here on this call. From the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, and they will discuss respectively Lebanon and Jordan. Dr. Ayman Rabi from the Palestinian Hydrology Group will cover the work in the Occupied Palestinian Territories. And from there, we will lead on to Dr. Amer Amdel-Meged, who will cover Egypt. I have very long surnames to pronounce, even longer than mine. I hope I'm doing them all justice. Following this, we're going to have a Q&A session led by our moderator and also our Al Murunah project coordinator, Dr. Vasudha Aberatna. Finally, in conclusion, I will hand over to the Al Murunah Now current project lead, Stephen Fragazzi, who's going to provide a brief summary and concluding remarks. Next slide, Vasudha. Great, thank you. So most of you will know that Al Murunah is one of IWMI's flagship projects in the MENA region. Our project goal is to increase water security in the MENA through the implementation of resilient nature-based solutions in the face of climate change and land degradation. Al Murunah works to achieve its goal by, number one, implementing resilient nature-based water solution pilots in agricultural communities, as well as strengthening, empowering, and catalyzing national capacities for their implementation. Next slide, please, Vasudha. Great, thank you. So I think a really important question for all of us here and for those of you listening into this webinar is, why did we undertake climate change downscaling for Al Murunah? In practice, Al Murunah has three main workstream pillars, and the downscaling work supports delivery across each of them. Firstly, by implementing pilot RNBWS projects in agricultural communities, it's really important for the application of the downscaling information to ensure that the interventions that we are designing are appropriate for the climate of today and of the next generation. Secondly, by supporting adoption capacity and innovation uptake in pilot communities and with national stakeholders, we are providing results and information that they can readily use. Members of the pilot community, farmers, water managers, cooperative association and others, as well as the wider national stakeholders at large from government and non-governmental organizations, all are able to learn to apply innovations that support climate change adaptation. Thirdly, through supporting the enabling environment within national policies, institutions, and through scaling approaches, we are contributing. Here, we can help plan more widely for climate change adaptation through policy and investment. Government agencies and donors really require this robust information on anticipated climate change. Next slide, please. Okay, so here I want to talk a little bit about how climate change downscaling is intended to benefit our pilot projects, pilot communities and national stakeholders. And that's really the main topic of our partners' presentations today. You're going to hear about how the downscaling has been incorporated into RNBWS pilots in terms of agricultural and water management practices. It's also being integrated into the project's capacity building for pilot community and national stakeholders, all of whom will be learning about anticipated climate change and techniques to adapt to it. very finally, the downscaling is going to support wider RNBWS, agricultural and water management planning and implementation. The modelling approach that we've employed is easily replicable and can be used in wider areas and for other purposes. Final slide, please, Vasudha. So in essence, this concludes my introduction. I'm very grateful for your attention, and I hope that you find the webinar useful in your work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now, Vasudha, you are able to go to the presentation from Dr. Tarafin.
Thank you so much, Vidisha. Now you will hear from Dr. Tarafin, Climate and Environment Policy and Program Manager from Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, as known as FCDO. FCDO, which is the donor organization of Murunah project.
Well or something being dug and nobody uses it. Why? Downscaling. It seems very strange to talk about downscaling when we hear so much of upscaling. So why are we doing this, and why is this a priority for the UK government? The heart of downscaling is community, and community is essential to climate change action for three particular reasons. Firstly, community are the ones who know what they need. We've all heard of examples of a well or something being dug and nobody uses it. Why? Because nobody had consulted the community in the first place to find out what they needed. Secondly, community are the ones who know what their priorities are. Again, we've all heard examples of multiple trenches being built and then used for different purposes. Why? Because donors didn't coordinate, so households end up with multiple variations of the same product. Thirdly, communities are the only ones who can make a product or a service really sustainable. Too many projects are successful during their lifetime, but 1, 2, 5 years later, nothing has happened. Community buy-in is necessary, community engagement is essential. These IWMI projects have adapted to community, have worked with community, so it's working with them rather than delivering to them. And these projects are special because they bring together not just local understanding, but national priorities for sustainable transformation. Nature-based solutions are probably not the most widely discussed concept in the Middle East and North Africa. And yet we find that people are practicing these things. They're just not talking about them in these terms. So to some extent, it's resurrecting or bringing to mind techniques, knowledge that has already been used. But even within communities, we find that not everyone is an equal beneficiary. IWMI's work on gender in particular tackles this. I've noticed the projects having an increasingly diverse and inclusive consultation process, ensuring that everyone is being brought in, that all voices are being heard. And that's the only way you can deliver for whole communities. The Middle East and North Africa is the world's most water-stressed region. 6.3% of the world's population live there, but only 1.4% of the world's freshwater population of water is there. Add into that, there's a lack of international climate finance and an international lack of evidence, and you have a problem that's not only existing, but only going to get worse. And in fact, all 4 places in which IWMI are operating are amongst the world's 15 most stressed water places. All of these have additional problems. not just the social political problems, but particular problems related to water, whether that is transportation and management, or whether that is water theft. These problems exacerbate an existing crisis that is only going to get worse without change. Governments talk to governments, but we need to understand diverse positions, and working with the International Water Management Institute allows the UK to do this. Climate change is happening now. It's not just a problem for the future, so we need the tools now. Technology may have a part to play, but we can't wait until we decide we've got a solution that's going to address every problem. It will be too late by then. So why has the UK prioritised this approach and working with IWMI? Because we need that evidence base. We know that community is at the heart of this. We know that it will work from the ground up. And in fact, many of the things that are increasingly talked about in the international climate finance situation, whether that's vulnerability, inclusivity, or nature, and their importance, are increasingly recognised, but already ahead of the curve in what the International Water Management Institute are delivering. Upscaling requires downscaling. A good base starts with a solid foundation, and that's what these projects do.
Thank you so much, Tara. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce our key presenter, Karim Beregui. Karim is an expert in climate modeling and statistical downscaling with a focus on producing high-resolution climate scenarios. His extensive work includes assessing the impacts of climate change on water resources, agriculture, and biodiversity, particularly in the MENA region. In today's webinar, Karim will guide us through the detailed climate downscaling analysis for our 4 pilot basins. Karim, over to you.
So before diving into the technical details, Assalamu alaikum, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karim Bargawi, and I'm a climate and water modeling specialist. And I'm excited to share the results of our climate change statistical downscaling work for pilot basins in 4 Middle Eastern and North African countries. These include Jordan, Palestine, Lebanon, and Egypt. So the main objective of our current work under Al-Murunah project is to produce reliable, high-resolution climate information to support adaptation strategies in agriculture, water management, and biodiversity conservation. Over the next 30 minutes, I will walk you through our approach, methodology, results, and the potential implications for the region. I encourage you to ask questions at the end of the presentation, and I'm happy to dive deeper into any aspect that interests you. So before diving into the technical details, I'd like to first highlight the main objective of this work. So our goal was to produce high-resolution climate change scenarios to assess the impacts on 4 specific pilot basins, which are shown in the figure here. Ras Ba'albak in Lebanon, Wadi al-Fari'a in Palestine, Wadi Sir in Jordan, and Abu al-Matamir in Egypt. As you can see, these are relatively small basins, and despite their small size, these basins exhibit diverse climate regimes and face significant challenges in terms of water resources and agricultural productivity. So by generating high-resolution projections for temperature and rainfall, we aim to provide actionable climate data to support adaptation strategies in water management and biodiversity conservation. Ultimately, the insights and data produced through this effort will enable modelers to drive hydrological or crop or ecological models to simulate local climate impacts more accurately. So here is the outline of today's presentation. We'll start by introducing what downscaling is and why it's necessary, especially for small basins like the ones we are focusing on. I'll explain the motivation behind this effort and what makes our data unique for the region if compared to other available open source datasets. After that, I'll take you through the methodology, specifically how we applied the bias-corrected statistical disaggregation (BCSD) technique to produce the high-resolution climate projections for temperature and rainfall. Then I'll present the main results over the 4 pilot basins, highlighting key findings and their applications. Finally, we'll discuss the next steps, including how this work can be expanded. In simple terms, downscaling is a method used to derive local or regional climate information from broader scale global climate models. The assumption here, of course, is that the large scale conditions are exhibiting an influence on our local and regional scales. So that is true to some extent, basically everywhere around the globe. And this is perhaps less true in the tropics, where we've got a lot of strong local forcing, and more true in the extratropics, where you have influence of the global storm track system and so on. So the global climate models, or GCMs, typically operate at coarse spatial resolution of about 100 to 200 to 150 kilometers, which limits their ability to capture fine-scale climatic features, especially in areas with complex topographies like some of our basins. So this makes it challenging to use their outputs directly for local impact studies. Why would we want to do this? So to start with, the climate system is global by nature. So we rely on global climate models to represent that system. However, current global models, spatial resolutions, are still quite coarse, as I mentioned. And this brings us to the problem illustrated here in the figure up left in the slide. So you can see our region of interest, and the black box in the image represents a typical 200 kilometer by 200 kilometer GCM grid cell. As you can see, it covers multiple basins across 3 different countries: Ras Baalbek in Lebanon, Wadi al-Fari in Palestine, and Wadi Sir in Jordan. And so these basins have completely distinct climate regimes in terms of temperature and rainfall and extreme events, but they will be represented by a single and uniform value in the general global model. So all 3 regions will be treated as a single coastal region by the model, resulting in the same climate output for very different local conditions. This lack of detail makes the raw GCM data unusable for local impact studies or adaptation planning. That's why downscaling is essential. It allows us to translate broad-scale data into higher resolution, capturing the fine details and distinctions between regions, so each basin's unique climate characteristics are accurately represented. Without downscaling, we'd be working with data that's too generalized for effective local decision-making, which is why this step is critical for our analysis. And there is an analogy with the camera resolution. So really, if you want to see what's going on in a particular place with any detail, then you can't really get that from global models. And of course, if we want to use this information to help us make decisions about a particular thing, then we need information that accounts for the specificities of that location at the scale that we want to make this decision. High-resolution projections provide a better understanding of localized extreme events, such as heat waves, intense rainfall, or droughts, which directly impact the effectiveness of nature-based solutions. It's important for planners to identify climate hotspots and assess vulnerability to extreme events like flash floods or droughts, at a finer scale because this information is essential for selecting the right nature-based solution strategy in areas where local communities and ecosystems are at higher risk. So this process of downscaling include a few technical methods to translate coarse resolution outputs from global GCM into higher resolution. And there are two main approaches: dynamical downscaling, which uses regional climate models, and this method is very expensive in terms of IT resources, and it is time consuming. And there is the statistical downscaling, which employs advanced mathematical relationships based on historical observations. Here we have the monthly cumulative rainfall averages and monthly temperature averages for Wadi Sir in Jordan for the period 1980-2014. The values shown are from ground observations, which are represented by the black line, and they are compared to historical simulations from 7 different global circulation models over the same period, the line in silver. And as you can see, none of these models are able to reproduce the observed climatology of these two important climate parameters. This mismatch is problematic because it means that any decisions based on raw GCM outputs would be highly misleading. For instance, if we were evaluating nature-based solutions such as reforestation or watershed management in complex terrain, like Wadi Sir, for example, the models would not capture the critical local variations that affect slope, soil type, and elevation. So without downscaling, we would risk implementing solutions that are not well adapted to the real-world conditions of these basins. Now, in order to understand why also our work is so critical, and can we find the appropriate data somewhere, we first evaluated all the existing open source downscaled SEMIP6 datasets to see if they could meet our requirements. We found several available datasets, but each had limitations that made them unsuitable for our specific needs. First, we have the world CLIM datasets. These are at a very high spatial resolutions of 1 kilometer and cover 23 GCMs from the SEMIP6 experiments. While the spatial detail is excellent, the temporal resolution is very coarse, consisting only of 20-year climatological averages. This makes them unsuitable for understanding interannual or seasonal variability, and especially for analyzing specific extreme events that are critical for climate impact studies. Next, we considered the CCAFS datasets, which are valuable for long-term agricultural planning. However, they only provide 30-year averages and use a simplified downscaling method called the delta method. This approach simply adjusts historical climatology based on projected GCM changes without correcting for inherent biases or spatial inaccuracies.
Give us a minute. We are trying to count sound of the presentation.
Now, in order to understand why also our work is so critical, as shown here in the figure for Wadi Sir in Jordan, the downscaled temperature data from NASA GDDP, so the blue line, the blue line, still shows a bias of more than 7 degrees Celsius in some months, when compared to observations, the black line. This is a substantial deviation, making it unreliable for local scale applications. These limitations in existing datasets highlight why we need to develop high-resolution climate scenarios tailored specifically for our pilot basins. None of the current datasets could provide the temporal detail, spatial accuracy, or bias correction needed for effective local scale adaptation. Now let's briefly introduce the CMIP6 models that we used in this study. So in fact, we used all the available 37 GCMs within the platform of CMIP6. Each of these models operates under different assumptions and physics, which helps provide a broader perspective on potential future climate conditions. So we tried to assess all of them and extract or work with the best for the region. And we focused on 3 key illustrative scenarios. The SSP 4.5, which represents a middle of the road path. The SSP 7.0, reflecting a scenario with high emissions and fragmented regional development. And the SSP 8.5, which assumes very high emissions and rapid economic growth. These scenarios provide a range of possible futures to guide our climate impact assessment. Now for the observations. For the statistical downscaling, we need accurate observations. And since we didn't have access to long-term ground observations in the pilot basins, we leveraged high-quality reanalysis datasets combined with satellite-based products to establish a reliable historical baseline. We used ERA5 Land, which is a global reanalysis dataset produced by the European Center for Medium-Range Weather Forecasts, ECMWF. This dataset is widely recognized as the world's best reanalysis for climate data, providing hourly climate variables at a 10-kilometer spatial resolution dating back to 1950. It was our primary source for historical temperature data. Then for rainfall, we used the multi-source weighted ensemble precipitation (MSWEP) dataset from Princeton University. This dataset merges ground observations, satellite data, and atmospheric reanalysis, offering high temporal resolution and global coverage. It's particularly suitable for hydrological applications, which require accurate representation of rainfall variability. The combination of ERA5 Land and MSWEP rainfall allowed us to build a robust baseline, which we then used for the identification of the most valuable general circulation models among the CMIP6 to choose for our statistical downscaling method. To ensure the reliability of our downscaled climate projections, we used a rigorous evaluation framework. The challenge in climate model evaluation is that it's tricky to compare 2 vector plots such as rainfall, minimum temperature, maximum temperature, and average temperature using just one metric. Traditionally, we would use separate metrics like root mean square error or correlation coefficient for each component. But what if model A is better in terms of temperature and worse in terms of rainfall if compared to model B? So then, which model to choose? In fact, we need a single index to evaluate multiple climate variables simultaneously. And we employed then the Multivariable Integrated Evaluation Index, MEA, for the assessment of the global circulation models. This index helps assess the overall performance of climate models by integrating multiple variables into a single evaluation metric. And let's look at how we assessed the performance of the selected GCMs in our basins. So from the initial set of GCMs, the 37 models, we identified a subset that performed consistently well across all basins. The models we retained are listed in this slide. Each of these models demonstrated strong skill in capturing the local climatology, making them suitable for bias correction and further downscaling. It's important to note that even the best performing models still exhibit some biases, which is why we incorporated bias correction techniques to ensure that our downscaled outputs are reliable for local scale applications. The identified models then served. Let's now discuss the Let's now discuss the core of our methodology, which is the bias-corrected statistical disaggregation, or BCSD technique. This method is designed to produce high-resolution daily climate projections by addressing the biases and downscaling them to match local conditions. So how we do that? First, we start with the GCM estimates for a given variable, like rainfall or temperature. Since these estimates are at a coarse resolution and often contain biases, we apply a bias correction step to align the GCM output with observed historical data. Then we use scaling factors derived from daily observations to disaggregate the GCM data to a finer spatial resolution, making it suitable for local impact studies. For example, in the case of rainfall, the GCM precipitation field is corrected and then disaggregated using scaling factors to produce daily projections at 10 kilometer resolution. Same for temperature. So we applied this method to generate daily projections for the three different scenarios, 4.5, 7.0, and 8.5, focusing on 4 key variables, which are the average temperature, daily average temperature, minimum, maximum temperature, and precipitation. So this approach allowed us to capture not only the long-term trends, but also the day-to-day variations that are critical for local scale adaptation planning. The selected indices for the baseline assessment were tailored to cover a wide range of sectors that are particularly vulnerable to climate variability and change, like health, agriculture, food security, water resources, and also energy. We start with temperature-related indices, such as the maximum of daily maximum temperatures, the number of days with maximum temperature above the 90th percentile, and minimum of daily minimum temperatures. These are highly relevant for health impacts, for example, the occurrence of heat waves and agricultural stress due to extreme temperatures, for example. The number of days with minimum temperature below the 10th percentile, this is also chosen. Also, it highlights the occurrence of cold spells, which can affect energy demand and heating requirements, for example. Hot wave days and consecutive dry days, CDD, provide insights to extreme events, which are critical for assessing agricultural productivity and water resources management, as these events can severely impact crop yields and water availability. In the context of water resources, indices such as total yearly precipitation, 3-month SPI, for example, the September-November 3-month SPI is a proxy of a delayed summer breaking rains, which is very important, and hydrological drought, like the 6-month SPI, 12-month, 36-month SPI for groundwater, help us understand the patterns of drought occurrence and water stress in the basins. Finally, indices like SU35, number of days with daily air temperature above 35 degrees, and FH7, which is the number of hours during the growing season with air temperature below 7 degrees, are particularly relevant for the crop production, for flowering and vernalization. And here we present the results of our temperature bias correction using the BCSD method for 2 of our pilot basins, Ras Baalbek in Lebanon and Abu al-Matamir in Egypt. The figures show the comparison between raw GCM outputs, represented in the left column with the orange line, and observation, black line, and our bias-corrected projections on the right column, green lines. As you can see, the raw GCM data tends to overestimate or underestimate temperature significantly. After applying our bias correction, the corrected values are much closer to the observed data, reducing the error and making the projections more reliable. Here we present the results, same results for the same 2 basins, but for rainfall bias correction. And rainfall is particularly challenging variable to downscale accurately because of its high variability in time and space. In the raw GCM data on the left column, we often see large discrepancies compared to observed rainfall, with either significant overestimation or underestimation of monthly values. After applying the BCSD method, the bias-corrected rainfall projections align much more closely with the observed data, as you can see in the column. So here we present the observed trend of 2 key temperature parameters in the 4 basins during the period 1980-2014. So we notice that we already notice the existence of a significant positive trend in terms of number of warm days and a significant reduction of the number of cold hours. And you can see, for example, Wadi al-Faria is suffering the most as a warm trend for the number of warm days, with 8.5 days per decade. And if we project this trend, so by the year 2090, under the high emission scenario SSP 8.5, for example, we expect a maximum temperature increase of up to 4.7 degrees in Palestine, 4.8 in Jordan. Such a significant rise in temperature will have major implications for agricultural productivity and water demand in these regions, of course. We also project a drastic reduction in the number of cold days, over 80% decline by 2090. This reduction will disrupt the traditional growing seasons and could negatively impact winter crops, which are currently well adapted to colder temperatures. For the other 2 basins, Abu al-Matamir in Egypt and Ras Baalbek in Lebanon, we expect a similar increase in maximum temperature, up to 4.3 in Egypt and 5.2 in Lebanon. Such warming will likely cause heat stress in crops and increase evapotranspiration, intensifying water scarcity issues. So overall, these temperature projections indicate a challenging future for agriculture systems. This slide focuses on the key precipitation and drought projections for Wadi al-Faria in Palestine, Wadi Sir in Jordan, and we represent all the 3 projection scenarios in red, orange, and yellow colors, and in light blue the historical simulation or baseline. So you can see that almost all the 3 scenarios agree on the high positive trend, or mainly the negative trend for the reduction of the cold days in both basins. By 2090, under the high emission scenario SSP 8.5, also we project a decline in annual rainfall by up to 13% in Lebanon. Additionally, we expect an increase in the number of consecutive dry days. More extended dry spells are a clear indicator of a heightened drought risk. For the precipitation, 13% reduction may not seem extreme at first glance, but it will have a significant impact on water availability, especially when combined with increased temperatures and evapotranspiration rates. So prolonged dry periods, like we see in the CDD, can also affect the groundwater recharge, putting additional pressure on already stressed water resources. Here we present the key precipitation and drought projections for the other two pilot basins, Ras Baalbek and Abu al-Matamir. By 2090, we expect a more pronounced decline in annual precipitation, up to 22% this time in Egypt and 15% in Lebanon. And moreover, there will be a significant increase in severe drought frequency, as you see in the first graph and the second, the 36 SPAI. So by the end of the century, the most exceptional drought we saw in the past will become more prolonged and much more intense. This will not only impact agricultural productivity, but also put further stress on local communities and ecosystems that depend on reliable water supplies. The combination of declining rainfall and decreased drought frequency means that these basins will need targeted interventions to enhance water conservation, optimize irrigation practices, and explore alternative water sources to maintain agricultural and ecosystem. In this slide, we present the results of our precipitation projections for Ras Baalbek in Lebanon. The figure shows the projected changes in total annual precipitation, reaching 22%, as we said, and we see a clear downward trend in total precipitation, especially under the high emission scenario 8.5. But the three scenarios agree on this, almost on the negative trend. So to conclude, our high resolution climate projections for the four pilot basins, Ras Baalbek, Wadi al-Fari'a, Wadi al-Sir, Abu al-Matamir, demonstrate high reliability, outperforming existing datasets in terms of both spatial and temporal precision. The data generated through this project are crucial for water, crop, and ecosystem modeling, providing a solid foundation for assessing climate change impacts and designing targeted adaptation strategies. This work opened the doors for more reliable impact assessments by enabling the use of these high-resolution projections to drive various models, as I said, including the crop models, hydrological models, and ecological models. This means that our results can directly inform decision-making processes and enable more effective upscaling of pilot initiatives, ultimately promoting sustainable management of water resources and agricultural systems. Looking forward, the methodology and data can be leveraged by national task forces to support climate change communication and reporting. Future efforts might focus on capacity building and technology transfer, empowering local experts to replicate and expand this approach to other basins and regions facing similar climate challenges. Thank you for your time and looking forward to your questions about any of these or comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karim. So now we will have a 10 minutes Q&A session. We will have a Q&A session at the end of this webinar for 30 minutes. So this will be a very short Q&A session. So you can ask your questions in the chat. I've already seen that you posted your questions and Karim already answered. So if you want to talk and ask a question, you can raise your hand so we can unmute you.
From here, right?
Ayman, you can unmute. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, I'm muted now. Thank you very much. Thank you, Karim, for this interesting presentation. We understand, of course, downscaling, the importance of downscaling. Yet, I don't know how reliable it is to rely on this downscaling results without actual verification on the ground. Because, if we are planning projects on the ground without like real data that comes from the ground to just support the downscaling results, that would be a little bit risky. Can you just elaborate a little bit on that and what is the importance of that? Thank you.
Yes, sure. Yes, thank you for this interesting question. In fact, as you said, we didn't have access to long period data, observed ground stations. However, we used for the downscaling as observations, we used the reanalysis data, which are, so for temperature, we use the reanalysis data, which are a mix between models and remote sensing data. And this data came from the ECMWF, European Center, and they are validated in many different regions of the globe. Our team validated this data in the MENA region for many other locations under other projects, and we found that it has a less bias, and it is very, it's very reliable if compared to observations. So this is for the temperature. For the rainfall, we looked at many products of rainfall data, including chirps, including ERA5, TRIM, MS-WEB, and for North Africa and Middle East, we found that MS-WEB shows it was also validated in several paper and other work, and we found that it was the best product fitted for the region. So we used this product for the downscaling of rainfall.
Okay.
Hope it's clear, Ayman. So I think let's move to our other presentations and let's continue our Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So now we will listen to the presentations of our partners from Jordan, Lebanon, Occupied Palestinian Territories, and Egypt. They will introduce you to their pilot projects and how they are incorporating these climate change downscaling study results to their projects. First, you will hear from Hakam Mandoori, Climate Change and Resilience Officer from IUCN. He will talk about the pilot project of Lebanon.
Greetings to everyone. This is Hakam Mandoori, the country lead for Lebanon under the Murunah project. I work for the International Union for Conservation of Nature, the regional office for West Asia based in Amman. IUCN is IWMI's implementing partner under the Murunah project. The project area in Lebanon is located in the northeastern part of Lebanon, specifically in Baalbek Hermel Governorate. The project area lies within the villages of Ras Baalbek and Qa. Since we are dealing with a water basin, it intersects with the administrative boundaries within the two aforementioned villages. As demonstrated in the presented map, the basin is subdivided into several watersheds. The pink color represents Baalbek watershed, while the other three colors represent Qa watersheds. As a whole, the area of the basin is around 260 square kilometers, with a varied elevation from 700 to 2,600 meters above sea level. As the names of the two villages indicate, Ras Baalbek Baalbek is the upstream and Qa is the downstream. Precipitation varies from 200 to 450 millimeters per year, and the population of the two villages is around 29,000 registered inhabitants. Through the participatory planning process with the relevant stakeholders, the pilot site in Lebanon was designed comprising the following components. Firstly, in order to tackle the significant impacts of flash floods, the first component is about flood management measures, specifically gap-in walls. These are conceptually small-scale natural dams. Secondly, downstream, and since we are talking about an agricultural area, the second component is a solar-powered agricultural demonstration farm, which will introduce state-of-the-art agricultural management systems and practices, inter alia drip irrigation system, and intercropping. The third component is an afforestation plan that is based on native species. Alongside carbon sequestration, the afforestation is envisaged to stabilize the soil upstream and contribute to mitigating the impacts of flash floods. Last in order, but not in magnitude, the community empowerment component is an integral part in all components, particularly in the demonstration farm where the existing women cooperatives will be the main beneficiaries. I will narrow down the scope of this presentation to the flood management measures to sequentially explain how the climate change downscaling study will be incorporated to the pilot project. Thus far, the planned flood management measures, namely the gap-in walls, have been designed using a three-stage design process. At first, we commenced this with a flood risk assessment utilizing disk review, data collection, hydrological modeling using HIC-HMS, and hydraulic modeling using HIC-GRAS. The second stage was the intervention design based on IUCN's Global Nature-Based Solutions Standard and international guidelines on natural and nature-based features for flood risk management. The design was verified through consultation meetings with key stakeholders and field visits to assess the efficiency and sustainability of existing flood management structures. As a summary, the shown figure demonstrates the design process of the gap-in walls with an example from another project of IUCN in Jordan, since the physical implementation is not completed yet in Lebanon. So, the designed flood management measures were based on historical climate data from weather stations, literature, and open data sources. The climate change downscaling study will enable us to broaden the flood management planning process through flood mapping under climate scenarios. The produced climate change model will be integrated into the current hydrological and hydraulic models to broaden the scale of these analyses and enable informing flood management planning in the entire basin to cover the 250 square kilometers under climate scenarios. Therefore, proposing targeted measures that address both current and future flood hazards. As a summary, the flood management plan that is based on climate scenarios will eventually guide the implementation of long-term adaptive water management strategies and directly address flood risks under different climate scenarios. That's it from my side. Thank you for listening and have a good day. Over to you, IWMI colleagues.
Now, Dr. Ayman Rabi, Executive Director of Palestinian Hydrology Group, will be presenting. He will describe the pilot project in Occupied Palestinian Territories.
Hello everybody, my name is Ayman Rabi from Palestinian Hydrology Group, and I'm going to present today the incorporation of the climate change downscaling to our pilot project in Palestine, which is taking place in what we call Farah Upper Catchment. Farah Upper Catchment is located in the northern part of the West Bank, as you can see here in the map to the lower part of left part of the slide. It comprises of 3 communities, namely Ras Al Farah, which is located here, and then Farah Refugee Camp and Wadi Al Farah. The total population of the 3 communities are 12,000 people, and the total area of these pilot area it is around 45 square kilometer. In terms of like the characteristic of the study area or the pilot area, the average rainfall ranging from 450 to 500 millimeter. In the upper part of the catchment, it goes down to like 200 millimeter per year in this lower part of the catchment. The temperature, of course, varies from 18.5 to 20 degrees Celsius, and evaporation reaches 1,440 millimeter per year. The catchment is rich with its groundwater, and of course, it has around 8.8 million cubic meter per year. It's been abstracted through groundwater wells, while the main discharge is coming from Farah Spring of like around 3 million cubic meter per year, and these kind of water, like it is used for irrigating around 2,858 dunums. In terms of like our pilot, this is of course in the upper picture, you see the spring as it is looking right now. The project that we are proposing here is of course converting this space of the spring into a more like living space, into a more like environmental space, so that it can look more of a natural area. What we are proposing is of course rehabilitating the spring source here by removing this kind of rubble here, and of course let the water flow all year around, and of course providing protection to the spring source here in order not to allow any kind of intruders or pollution coming into the spring surface area. We are also rehabilitating part of the irrigation canal that conveys the spring water downstream to the agricultural land. We are building a small reservoir here for farmers so that they can regulate the water allocation for farmers during the time that they need it. And then we are also providing protection against flooding from this part to the spring source, so that we also providing a kind of channel embankment here. So this wadi channel will be also used to discharge the excess flood water through here, so that not to intrude into the spring area and making demolition and of course making problem. In addition to that, of course, we are creating what we call a biodiversity garden, agro-biodiversity garden, which is in this part here. So this biodiversity garden will be utilized in order to allow people to understand about their native species, native plants, and of course trying to preserve these plants in this area and make education and make people more aware around biodiversity in this area. In addition, we are of course promoting a small space for women in these small kiosks to market their products, and therefore it is a kind, in general, we are creating not only a natural space but also a community space where people can come and can of course utilize this beauty of this place here in the same time. We are of course installing solar energy lighting. We are installing biotoilets so that we maintain the environmental and ecological identity of the space, and we are also promoting a water user association so that it can also help in managing this space and managing the spring water among the farmers. In the meantime, we are promoting awareness to the public in order to save it, and also building the capacity of the local council as well as the water user association in order to preserve this area here. So this is what we are proposing. This is how the area will be looking like after our project, and this is what we're hoping that it will be also managed well so that it will continue and maintain the spring flow. In terms of like the climate change downscaling, according to the study made for downscaling here, we were witnessing an increase in the daily temperature, the maximum daily temperature by 1 degree per decade, and that is expected to start rising from 2040 onward. In addition to that, the minimum daily temperature will be increasing by 0.9 degrees Celsius per decade. With that, of course, the reduction in cold days by 80%, an increase in hot days, of course, with a maximum temperature, the number of days will be rising from 18 to 150 50 days, as you can see also here. The reduction in rainfall is expected to be 13%, and of course, the increase in consecutive dry days number is also expected to here with a positive trend that will be more witnessed here in this, of course, segment of the chart after 2060. What we are doing in the pilot and how our pilot will be incorporating the climate data and the climate downscaling. Of course, the increase in temperature means that it will have an impact on crop water requirement. It will have implication on agricultural water management. It will impact biodiversity, the loss of species, especially when the flowering period, when there is no water and there is very hot like times. The decrease in precipitation means that lowering groundwater recharge and therefore affecting groundwater availability and slow spring discharge. It will also cause low runoff, which will implicate like the water harvesting structures that it is in the catchment. The increase in extreme weather conditions and events like flash floods, for example, it will have implications on infrastructure and it will cause soil erosion. In our pilot project, we will make sure that agrobiodiversity garden will maintain drought-resistant local baladi and native plants so that we can also preserve local seeds, so maintain biodiversity and protect it. Spring rehabilitation will ensure to maintain spring flow all year around, and therefore farmers can use the irrigation water for their agriculture. The Water User Association will be better informed to properly manage and allocate water from the spring to the farmers and to the users. In terms of like promoting capacity to like adequate crop selection, as well as areas cultivated under irrigation, that will also be part of the training and capacity building for the farmers as well as the Water User Association. We will also help promote dialogue with all well owners and stakeholders so that they can lower the pumpage during the drought period and maintain the sustainability of the spring and the groundwater for their benefits and for the community's benefits. We will develop also alternatives together with the community for other alternative water sources so that they can use it in order to support the shortages in the expected water as a result of the drought. Then we will also propose mitigation measures together with the community so that we can maintain like the sustainability of the project as well as the spring, and we maintain this project as a nature-based solutions that will also help in promoting the livelihood of the community in general. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ayman. It's time to listen to the interesting facts from Dr. Amr Abdil, Environmental Governance Program Director from CIDAR, Egypt.
The Nile Delta are already facing the profound effects of climate change, which is particularly detrimental to rural agricultural communities. Especially, those living in poverty are particularly vulnerable to climate hazards and the negative impacts of long-term natural resource stresses on agricultural and water management systems. The agriculture and water resources face significant challenges due to rising temperatures, changing rainfall patterns, and more frequent extreme weather events. High-resolution climate data is crucial for managing these challenges, especially in agriculture and the development of nature-based solutions. From 1980 to 2014, Abu al-Matamir has also experienced a warming trend. The warmest year on record is 2010, with temperatures 2.5 degrees Celsius above the average. Both maximum and minimum temperatures have shown a significant increase of 0.3 degrees Celsius per decade. The number of warm days has increased, with an additional 25 days above the 90th percentile and a decrease of 40 days below the 10th percentile over the 35-year period. The frequency of warm days, with maximum temperatures above 35 degrees Celsius and minimum temperatures above 15 degrees Celsius, has risen by 1.2 days per decade. Precipitation patterns show a fluctuating but steady trend with a slight negative slope of -0.8 mm per year, though the trend is not significant. However, the SPEI indicates significant trends towards increased drought, with a declining slope of -0.06 per decade, highlighting more frequent and intense drought conditions. The SPEI 36 metric assessment of hydrological drought impacts showed that the projected frequency of severe drought will increase compared to the historical period in Abu al-Matamir, with a high increase during the last 20 years of the century. Additionally, study demonstrated a slight decline of 7% in total rainfall was noted in Egypt alongside a rise in flash flood events. Downscaled climate projections for the pilot area in Abu al-Matamir indicate substantial changes in temperature and precipitation patterns across the three shared socioeconomic pathways, SSP, that represent potential future greenhouse gas emission scenarios. Projections show a clear warming trend and combat drought, with a significant rise in extreme events by the end of the century. The findings of the study underscore the critical need for targeted adaptation strategies to address the evolving climate-related challenges particularly in the context of water resource management, agriculture, and community resilience. Designing robust local climate change adaptation strategies requires high-resolution climate change projections across various emission scenarios. For example, crop choices and management practices, or flood management strategies, will vary depending on expected future conditions. The warming and precipitation includes the use of drought-tolerant crops and varieties, efficient irrigation methods, and adjusting sowing seasons to align with the changing climate, such as replacing autumnal crops with winter planting ones. The decreasing precipitation trends in Abu al-Matamir highlights the importance of improved water management. Intervention strategies such as water resources management and raising community awareness about water conservation, including drip irrigation, are crucial. These measures will help mitigate the impacts of reduced water availability and ensure sustainable water use. This image illustrates the salinity distribution in Beira Governorate. The data on soil salinity showed the soil in the pilot area was slightly to moderately saline. Thus, salt-tolerant crops should be used in combination with some soil treatment, such as soil amendments, gypsum requirement, and leaching requirements to enhance production and maintain the soil. Increasing awareness among farmers and clarifying the important role of planting specific varieties according to soil analysis and water quality have a major role in increasing productivity as well as preserving soil from deterioration. Increasing awareness and building the capacity of farmers and stakeholders is considered one of the most important priorities for implementing the strategy required to adapt to climate change through several training workshops. The proposed topics on climate change and its impact on agriculture, modern techniques on soil and water management, and integrating nutrients and pest management will be presented to farmers, representatives of civil society organizations, community-based organizations, CBOs, and extension engineers. Solar-powered system and drip irrigation technologies can support farmers to adapt to climate change by providing efficient use of water supply. In seasonal droughts, drip irrigation reduces water demand and reduces water evaporation losses by providing the necessary water resources directly to the plant when required. The intervention will include the establishment of 2 demonstration farms, each one fed DAN that will be compared with the control. Additionally, pump and modern irrigation infrastructure will be implemented for another 20 fed DAN, along with conducting farmer field schools in the pilot site and establishing a water user association to manage water distribution at the MASCA level. Hydroponic system can be applied in field or in-house to increase the profitability of farmers. In addition, it can be used for animal feeds as well as composting to use as organic fertilizer. The provision of machinery will help the framers to be cooperative and be an active factor in reducing climate risks in the area. These types of machinery would have a vital role in water savings, crop yield improvement, reduction in cultivation cost, job creation, and improve overall livelihoods and resilience. Additionally, the economic factor is vital in promoting climate change downscaling. Therefore, we are establishing a warehouse facility to act as a food processing facility for different crops, where women and youth have equal job opportunities with reasonable wages. The facility has an annual processing capacity of approximately 1,500 tons of artichokes per season, making it the largest of its kind in Isbat al-Hamra. The processing includes trimming, sorting, and packaging the artichokes for exportation. Furthermore, Al-Nawala not only processes artichokes but also receives them from neighboring facilities. Upgrading marketing infrastructure. Processing facilities, modernize and upgrade Nawala for year-round employment packaging, enhance facilities with advanced equipment and hygiene practices. Introduce new varieties and ensure quality. Research collaboration, partner with institutions to introduce new artichoke varieties. Training, implement training on cultivation best practices and global compliance standards. Improve financial access. Provide revolving funds for CBOs and women-led initiatives. Partnerships, work with financial institutions to offer accessible financing for smallholder farmers. The community space for women to produce and sell agricultural goods, alongside workshops for handicrafts, fosters economic resilience crucial for adapting to climate change. Additionally, the revolving funds enhance financial stability, ensuring communities can better withstand environmental challenges. In conclusion, empowering women through these initiatives not only supports local economies but also strengthens community resilience to climate change, promoting sustainable practices that benefit the environment.
Thank you, Dr. Amr. And now we are moving to the final presentation of the day from Faiza Slayat, Nature-Based Solutions Manager, IUCA. She will describe the pilot project in Jordan.
Hello everyone, this is Faiza from IUCN. I'm the country lead for Al Murunah project in Jordan, and I'm the nature-based solutions manager. I'm glad to share with you about Jordan project and mainly what is the locality as a project location. Well, just an introduction to the water scarcity. There are some challenges in Jordan, as we know that the annual average precipitation is within the range of 100 to 400 millimeter, with recorded very extreme rainfall events of over 300 millimeter within 24 hours once every 20 years during the 70 years. So And the latest projected climate change scenarios indicate that drier and hotter climate conditions with a decrease in precipitation between 5 to 30%, and also we have a response period for about 30 to 50 years for different pathways for which regional downscaling can be undertaken. Jordan also, as a water scarcity, is linked with socio-economic and geopolitical challenges, such as its status as one of the most water scarce countries in the world, and about 10% of the population are refugees who need water to add to their food. Also, it has also limited water storage, and also it has a significant reliance on transboundary water resources. Also, water scarcity in Jordan is increased by predictions of a rapidly rising population growth rate of about 1.6% and the associated demand for water and food. The scarcity of water, or the increased time and energy that's spent to acquiring this water, and may lead to the virtual collapse of traditional agricultural and forms of livelihood for household. Wadi springs are particularly known for their consistent flow, with an average discharge of 8 million cubic meter or more in the last 5 years. The Wadi watershed also area is around 48 square kilometer and characterized by the presence of approximately 14 natural springs. Wadi springs play a crucial role in supporting the water needs of the capital city in Amman. According to Murunah records in 2018, it contributes to approximately 15,000 cubic meters per day for drinking purposes and accounting for about 2% of Amman's total water supply. These springs contribute also to the region hydrological system. Wadi is a very urban area with 14 springs, as we mentioned before, and main challenges here in Wadi and mainly in the project locality are canals and irrigation structure are damaged, leading to water loss, and also the illegal pumping of water for households is reducing water availability for agriculture, and there is a conflict over allocation of water resources between agriculture and domestic use and tourism. There is an opportunities, or let's say more than opportunity, to work in Wadi Sir. We can start restoration around natural springs areas as well as around canals to prevent, safeguard water resources and infrastructure, and that's what we are doing in this stage. Maintenance of irrigation canals and other gray infrastructure, especially for reservoirs and water collection system and filtration, and engagement with farmers on climate smart practices and water management, and engaging the local community is the most important process in our work with the local community and the farmers in this project locality. Here you can see some photos from our meetings with the local community for discussing the challenges and how can we resolve it. Also here you can see the Tarabil spring, and you can see also the tankers who illegally pump the water and sell it for domestic usage from the spring source. If we are talking about the climate change, we all know that it's exacerbates the water shortage and the crisis, and the main issues that linked with the water crisis is the drought, decreasing precipitation, and rising temperature. So also the climate change, if we can say that it affects the water availability and agricultural productivity by changing precipitation patterns, droughts and water scarcity, rising temperature, and affecting soil degradation and desertification, and leading to impact on crop yields and impact on water-dependent agriculture, and also economic and social impacts. Here we can pass by all the project steps, starting from the site selection in September 2022 to the regional training workshop empowering local communities in resilient nature-based water solutions in November to December 2022, and then the first mission of participatory community planning, including problems tree and initial stakeholder identification and vision statement that held in January 2023. Also, secondary data collection around the site, such as hydrological, demography, population, etc. And the second mission of participatory community planning, including revising the analyzing the tree of problems, revising the initial stakeholder identification and analyzing their power, and revising the vision statement, analyzing the ownership and accountability in the duration between 14 to 16 February 2023. And also passing by conducting the baseline studies of the selected site, biophysical, hydrological study, and socioeconomic and gender study, finalized on the end of March 2023, followed also by the gap assessment in baseline studies, also scenarios building and decision making in October 2023. Also in the final stage, we end March 2024 by intervention assessment and design of pilot site progress work, and we have progress in that. How we can incorporate the climate change downscale into pilot project in Wadi Sir. So actually this study is very important, especially for resilient nature-based water solution. It can significantly improve the project design and implementation and long-term success. Integrating with local stakeholders through community engagement by educating stakeholders on climate change impact and the nature-based solution, helping them understand how local actions align with broader resilience goals, and policy alignment by using downscale data to influence policy, ensuring government plans incorporate climate risk management. Also scaling and replication also, as this can consider the pilots as a model. After evaluating the pilot success, the approach can be scaled and replicated in similar region using downscaled climate data to inform each intervention. In conclusion, incorporating climate change downscaling study enables the pilot project to anticipate and address future climate change challenges, optimizing interventions for long-term resilience. This proactive approach strengthens the project impact, aligning with environmental and social and economic and sustainability goals. The result of the study was including or indicating that clear warming trend with daily maximum temperature expected to rise by approximately 1 degree Celsius per decade. Additionally, a decline in precipitation, especially in the late 21st century, is projected, leading to potential hydrological drought conditions. Here you can see some of deteriorated irrigation canal in the downstream. And here, as we conducted many consultation meetings with main stakeholders from 3 ministries: water and irrigation, agriculture, and the Ministry of Environment, also the mayor of Wadi Sir municipality and the local community and farmers, also from both men and women. The proposed interventions were come as in this last format as firstly, formation of farmers association, also rehabilitation of springs sources for some of deteriorated springs, and we have الدالية, الدير, السقي, الطاحونة, الطرابيل, and القصر, which all of them proposed by Ministry of Water and Irrigation and the Mayor of Wadi Sir and the farmers. The third one, maintenance and rehabilitation of irrigation canals. Fourth, it's adopting the smart techniques of agricultural practices and water usage, using the reclaimed wastewater also in further production, and the formation or women empowerment in agriculture, and the creation of women and youth association for ecotourism. Development and distribute reclaimed wastewater and reuse in currently uncultivated or rainfed land. And here you can see the final workshop to agree on the scenario and the interventions in the presence of the ministry's representatives and the local community. And here you can see the last workshop results. The attendees from ministries and local community agreed to have these interventions, which is mainly focusing on more formation for cooperative or association, rehabilitation of springs sources, maintenance and rehabilitation of irrigation canals, and adopting the smart techniques of agricultural practices and water usage. So yeah, and this also women and youth empowerment in agriculture, and this also the scenario is called a community empowerment through nature-based solution and agricultural water management scenario, as per it is detailed interventions. This scenario will achieve the following benefits: water supply enhancement, prevention of leakage in irrigation canals, enhance the water use efficiency, enhance the crop water productivity, and also on-farm water harvesting through terraces and contours. Also, the last one, it's prevent soil erosion and silting. Yeah, here are the IUCN standard with 8 criteria that we considered in our project design. If you can extract from these criteria most of indication on how to design any interventions according to nature-based solution, and here I can summarize it by some points. The core of nature-based solution is social societal challenges, so it addresses most challenges such as food security, water security, and climate change. The second, it should be cost effective. Third, it should be scalable and replicable. Fourth, it should be considered the biodiversity and ecosystem integrity. Fifth, it's inclusive, transparent, and empowering the governments. The sixth, it should be managed adaptively. And seventh, it should be equitable, balances between achievement and its goal and benefits. And the last one, it should be the nature-based solution should be sustainable to align with what we need. The first intervention is done, which is the establishment of the agricultural cooperative, including 13 women and 11 men from the project locality, and now it's headed by women. She is Mrs. Layla Shabsour. And here you can see in the picture the establishment process, filling some papers, and in presence of Jordan Cooperative Corporation. Thanks a lot for your attention, and I'm ready for any question.
So thank you so much, Faiza. So now we will have our Q&A session. You can ask your questions in the chat, or you can raise your hand so we can unmute you to ask the questions.
I would like to request Karim to address the question that was posed actually quite early on by Dr. Tarafin. So about the modeling in the MENA region in general and biases that it has. I know this will be, I think this will be relevant to a number of people on the webinar today. So if you could just talk to that in a general fashion, Karim, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Stephen. In fact, the biases are, as I mentioned and showed in several slides, they are related to the global aspect of the climate model. So at 100 kilometer or 200 kilometer, we cannot represent well the land use, the crops and the topography. So in MENA region in general, we saw similar biases for all the climate data, especially when the region, when the zone of interest is very small and if it represents complex terrain. So where the biases will be even much worse than that. So the biases are general, not only in MENA but also in any other region of the world. When you look at small, very small basin, Venice or very small location, then you will automatically see these kind of biases.
Thank you.
Yes, Hakan, over to you.
Thanks, Asuda. So my question goes also to Karim. Karim, so you analyzed three SSPs or scenarios. Do you imagine significant differences if you included SSP number 4 or the divided way? Thank you.
I think we took all the extremes, for the scenarios, and I think it will not. It will be within the same interval. So in this study, I just took the SSPs that are mainly used and more likely, relevant for the studies, and that you can see in all the paper. But including the fourth one, yes, it's of course it's possible, and it will be, I think, within the interval.
Thanks, Karim.
Thank you. I may add one comment. So one of the questions, I had many interesting questions in the chat. So one of them was about the Cordex data, which is climate change downscaling, but dynamical downscaling based on regional climate models. It's an international effort, and it has its own platform that we can, of course, use. However, by experience, doing the dynamical downscaling, it requires a lot of precaution to do before starting the downscaling. First, you have to perform a sensitivity analysis to the physics of the region of your interest, so of your region of interest. So first, you have to calibrate your regional climate model so it reproduces the climatology of your region of interest, and it is very time consuming because you will use several physical schemes, etc. And then, of course, you have to run your regional climate model using the general circulation model as a boundary condition. And in this case, if your general circulation model is highly biased in your region of interest, then this bias will be inherent in your regional climate models. And that's why I don't, in general, I don't prefer to use already dynamical downscales from Cordex. Thank you.
There's a question in the chat. Yes, do you think if we compare two sites with different slope shades, we'll get different results?
The two sides with different slope shades will get different results. You mean so the climate, it's very complicated. It's not only for the slope shades, but because the surface will interact with the boundary layer, and then it will interact with the atmospheric layer, and this interaction may lead to exponential or bigger impact or not. So by just having just the two slope shades, it's not enough. However, we can of course always do the comparison. So, for example, here, Wadi al-Fari'a is not very far from Ras Ba'albak, and we saw big difference in the trend of temperature. In one of them, it reaches 5.2 degrees Celsius, which is much higher than the 4.3. So each location, it should be studied and analyzed separately and carefully with its own historical data.
Thank you. And there's another question. Can you please talk about the social method you have considered in the project? I mean, approach, tool, and instruments for advancing participation.
I think that question in particular, so that's not for a question for Karim, so I'll save you from that one, Karim. I think that that question is best answered by one of the partners, because the social interactions around the pilots have been undertaken by the partners. And so in the presentations, you heard a little bit about that. And in one of the responses that Hakam has provided in the chat, there's a little bit about that, but I will ask one of the partners to discuss a little bit, at least, how you're using this kind of information in the participatory planning process. Because as Tara mentioned at the beginning, we've had a very collaborative and participatory process, and as Faiza mentioned in her presentation and others, we've had a participatory process to get to the pilots that we are implementing now. So I think it would be useful if one of the partners is able to address this question. And so not to put anyone on the spot, but I'll leave it for one of the partners to raise your hand and address this. And it goes back to the question that we've had numerous times about where do we use technical expertise to inform the community participation and support community collaboration on the pilots themselves, and ultimately ownership of the pilot projects.
Yes, Jeremy, you can unmute your mic and speak.
Oh, hi, everyone. Yeah, my name's Jeremy, and I'm working on a sister program to Murunah, but I'm very new, which is why I also have questions. And I really want to appreciate all these presentations. I know that there's a very robust process in each of these programs that's been synthesized in a very short presentation. And my question is also an extension of the question that's just been asked. You know, these downscaled forecasts, there's quite a lot of heavy science behind these forecasts. And I was wondering, similarly, how has the project packaged these forecasts, or really thought about how it can be presented both to community members, but obviously different stakeholders, perhaps within government or specific departments that might have a little bit more of a technical background. And I'm also wondering, like, based on the forecast, I think each program presented an overview of some of the impact assessments. Like, what with those forecasts on temperature, rainfall, etc.? How would that impact on different sectors, whether it's agriculture, water resources? I was wondering, was there another stage of working through with the communities to really better understand those impacts, looking at the timescale? And finally, I'm wondering, like, and it's part of the same process, how did Al Murunah really build trust within communities to both, you know, want to use this information, but also thinking about the timescales? Quite often there's immediate priorities that, you know, communities, farmers, households might want to make in terms of ensuring, you know, production for this year to make sure there's food availability or that there's immediate water availability. Whereas some of these forecasts might be pushing us towards more longer term, slightly more dramatic interventions and shifts in ways of producing food, infrastructure required to improve water efficiency. So again, it's really just elaborating on the question just asked. But yeah, what were some of the processes that Al Murunah went through at the different sites to really build trust, to be able to explain these forecasts in a way that can be actioned? So thanks very much.
So I can respond to parts of that question. I think it makes sense to discuss that at the overall project level. Thanks for the question, Jeremy. So in terms of the process to develop the pilot projects, there was relatively extensive community engagement at the outset of the project. So there was determination of key problems in the area in each area related to agriculture and water management, and also socioeconomic and gender challenges in each of the pilots. So let's call that a problem analysis. And there was discussion of vision. So what communities wanted to improve in their through the project. There were additional conversations around different stakeholders who were involved in agricultural and water management, et cetera. That helped formulate the basis for community participation on options for pilot projects to address those problems. So once we understood the problems and the desired outcomes in each community, we, the project team, developed a range of options of interventions that are resilient nature-based water solutions. So we took community requests for, or rather community identified problems, and we identified potential solutions. Communities then, through the engagement process, in each community, there was feedback about those and changes, modifications, etc. So there was a bit, the technical team generated options, and then the community provided feedback. Community engagements provided feedback on those options, which was then taken to a structured decision-making process. So one of the things that we heard about early on was sort of the balance between what should be expert-led and what should be community-led. In terms of the climate change downscaling, that was undertaken for the most part at a time when the engagements were already underway. And so it has informed the technical design, and it will also inform some of the technical design of the pilots, and also some of the aspects around potential scaling of Al Murunah interventions. So in the community engagements in general, there has been discussion of the pilot interventions that will support climate change adaptation, which the technical team has incorporated the climate change downscaling information within their own thinking. So in terms of the community engagement on the climate change downscaling aspect, overall, there's an indirect element. And then in some countries, it has been a little bit more direct than that. And then when we get into the pilot implementation and the training and capability building, it addresses the application of the information as well. So I think at the project level, for each of the 4 countries, I think that I'm hopeful that answers the question in a useful way. And I'll stop there on that question. And again, any of Al Murunah partners, if you feel like adding, let's say, an example of how the conversations with communities have reflected your knowledge of the climate change downscaling, or you have explicitly discussed climate change impacts with community members, then please feel free to jump in.
Yes, Hakan.
Thanks, Suda. I'm just adding on top of what Stephen said. So in Al Murunah project, we have planned everything literally from the very beginning with the key stakeholders in a participatory manner. This started from specifying the problem until specifying a solution, and now at the implementation stage. And this is also likely to continue in the scaling up planning. And it starts this year, but it will be the bulk of this will be in the fourth fiscal year of Al Murunah. So the key stakeholders will keep involved until the last day of Al Murunah project. The participatory process is a key component in all stages. This is regarding the process. And getting back to your point, Stephen, this is also from my perspective also related to the scaling up. Once we start the engagement with the key stakeholders to talk about the scale up, what are we gonna propose, where we are going to propose, the downscaling results are really a crucial input for that. The argument is there. So if I'm talking about the case of Lebanon, if we are proposing new structures or new cropping patterns, the base for all of this is the climate change downscaling results.
Thank you, Hakan. And yes, Dr. Ayman. Dr. Ayman, you have raised your hand.
May I add something? This is Amr Abdelmajid from Sedari, Egypt. Actually, we are developing a model for the pilot area using the downscale data in addition to the hydrological data, the agricultural data, crops, water needs and water supply, in addition to the community knowledge collected in the baseline. And we are evaluating scenarios and their impacts in terms of water use efficiency, seasonal shifting, crop scenarios, agricultural productivity, and the nature-based solutions, interventions, impacts on climate resilience of the communities. And this is a response to the question that Stephen has asked about the community, the impacts of the downscaled global climate scenarios on the communities. And this is how we are going to evaluate their impacts. We will be developing this, our mathematical model at the pilot area. And we have started that. And the boundary, I would say our boundary conditions and initial data is coming from the downscaled data. Regarding the communities and their participation, as my colleague Hakam has mentioned, we've started every single step in participation with the communities and the relevant stakeholders. And we have corrected their perception of the nature-based solutions and raised their awareness on nature-based solutions and what are the basis and what are the criteria for selection of nature-based solutions. And this is how they got involved and engaged from the very beginning. This created a sense of ownership within the communities to the project and to the nature-based solutions, and they are now we are starting to formulate our task force, which will also spread the concept of nature-based solutions in the surrounding areas of the pilot areas and within the same and within the Abu al-Matamir and beyond Abu al-Matamir in Bahira and in the Delta at large. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Amr. So we don't have any. Okay, there's another question. Okay. Yeah. So if there are no any other questions, we can wind up for today. Yes, thank you all of your valuable participation and insightful questions today. As we have seen, downscaling climate data for local regions is essential in addressing climate change impacts at the scales where human activities and ecosystem interact. As we move forward, it is crucial to continue to leverage these insights, not only within the context of our pilot regions, but also for broad application. Collaboration between research, policymakers, and practitioners will be key to scaling these solutions. So let's use this opportunity to further strengthen our networks, share knowledge, and take meaningful steps toward a more resilient and sustainable future. Extremely sorry for the unforeseen technical issues. Thank you again for joining us today, and we will look forward to continue the important work together. Thank you.